In the heart of Detroit's industrial district, where the smell of rust mingles with dreams, a little girl named Maya Delacroix first learned that broken things could be made whole again. Her small hands helped her father Henri organize tools in their modest garage, not knowing she was organizing the pieces of her own destiny. Maya was the youngest of 5 daughters, crowded into a 2-bedroom apartment where hope was rationed as carefully as food. One by one, she watched her sisters escape through marriage, seeking salvation in someone else's arms rather than their own strength. But Maya was different. While others looked for rescue, she crawled under cars, her determined eyes reflecting the flickering fluorescent lights of her father's humble garage. Everything changed the day Henry's heart betrayed him. As her father clutched his chest in pain, 17-year-old Maya realized that sometimes life forces us to become who we're meant to be, ready or not. Night after night, Maya taught herself the language of engines. YouTube tutorials and library books became her teachers, while the rest of Detroit slept. Her hands grew calloused, her clothes permanently stained with motor oil, but her skills sharpened like her father's favorite wrench. Every sunrise brought new challenges, every sunset brought new knowledge. Success came gradually, then suddenly. Maya found herself shaking hands with her first employees, the scared teenager now a confident business owner. The day the Detroit Free Press called her the Motor City Miracle, Maya's family gathered around the newspaper like it was scripture. Their little girl had done the impossible. By 23, Maya owned 3 locations across Detroit. She stood proud before her empire, believing she had conquered the world. The day she moved her family to their beautiful new home, Maya thought she had rewritten their story. If only she had known that some stories have more chapters than we expect. Success, Maya discovered, was a lonely country. At her first high society networking event, surrounded by people who spoke in dollar signs and connections, she felt like a mechanic at a poetry reading. That's when Vivian Sterling entered her life like expensive perfume, intoxicating, seductive, and ultimately suffocating. "When do you have fun?" Vivian asked, offering Maya her first taste of champagne and her first step toward destruction. Vivian's world came with associates, Marcus Chen and Isabella Rodriguez, whose smiles were as polished as their illegal enterprises. They saw in Maya not a person, but an opportunity. Late at night, surrounded by stacks of money that smelled wrong, Maya wrestled with her conscience. But the sums were staggering, and her business needed capital. Just temporarily, she told herself. Just until she could secure legitimate financing. What began as weekend networking became nightly escapes. Maya lost herself in a world of parties where powder lines replaced finish lines, where alcohol numbed the growing voice that whispered she was becoming someone she didn't recognize. Love found her even in her darkness. David Washington, a community center worker with gentle eyes and genuine purpose, saw through her polished exterior. But Maya's double life meant double lies. Her sisters noticed first. Around a dinner table thick with tension, they confronted her about the changes, the missed calls, the defensive reactions, the stranger wearing Maya's face. The night her father fought pneumonia, Maya's chair sat empty at his bedside. Success had cost her the very relationships she'd worked so hard to protect. In David, Maya glimpsed the woman she could be, should be. Their conversations at the community center felt like coming home to a self she'd forgotten existed. But 2 worlds cannot occupy the same heart indefinitely. The collapse came with sirens and flashing lights. Police carried away boxes of evidence while Maya's legitimate empire crumbled alongside her illegal associations. In the courtroom, facing federal charges, Maya finally understood the true cost of her choices. The gavel that fell was not just legal judgment, but the sound of her old life ending. "We recommend pleading guilty for a reduced sentence," her lawyer said, and Maya realized that some prices can never be paid in full. Boxing up awards and photos from her empty office, Maya packed away not just objects, but dreams. The empire she'd built had become a house of cards, and she'd been both architect and demolition crew. In a studio apartment above a convenience store, Maya sat alone with her choices. The woman who once employed dozens now couldn't employ sobriety for a single day. The overdose brought her father to her bedside, his aged hands trembling as he held hers. "You remember when you used to take apart my old radio?" he whispered. "Maybe it's time to figure out how to fix yourself." Recovery began not with fanfare, but with admitting she was broken. In the treatment facility, surrounded by others fighting similar battles, Maya learned that healing requires community. Dr. Sarah Kim became her guide through the wreckage. "Addiction often fills a void," she explained. "But healing requires us to face that void directly." In circles of shared stories, Maya discovered she wasn't uniquely broken. Her pain had company, and in that company, she found strength. With other women who'd lost everything to addiction and poor choices, Maya learned that rock bottom could become a foundation. The day she received her first sobriety chip, Maya cried not from shame, but from hope. Each day clean was a victory measured in heartbeats, not dollars. Community service brought her back to David Center. He welcomed her not with judgment, but with the understanding that comes from witnessing transformation. Forgiveness from her sisters came slowly, then all at once. Their tearful embrace felt like coming home after years of being lost. In quiet moments, Maya wrote her truth. Journaling became archaeology, digging through layers of lies to find the authentic self buried beneath. Looking at old family photos, Maya saw the distance she'd traveled. The woman in those pictures seemed like a stranger, but also like a daughter finally coming home. Working with teenagers who reminded her of herself, Maya rediscovered her gift. Teaching automotive skills became teaching life skills, persistence, problem-solving, pride in honest work. When 16-year-old Jordan asked why she kept coming to the center, Maya realized she'd found something worth more than her lost fortune, purpose that couldn't be stolen or lost, only chosen daily. Presenting her social enterprise to investors, Maya spoke not of profit margins, but of human potential. Her new business model measured success in lives rebuilt, not just revenue generated. The ribbon-cutting ceremony for her automotive training facility felt different from her old successes. This celebration included the community she served, not just the ego she'd fed. Watching her first graduate shake hands with his new employer, Maya understood wealth redefined. This was prosperity that multiplied when shared. When David returned to her life, their conversation over coffee was tentative but genuine. They were different people now, scarred but stronger, wiser from their separate journeys through loss. Side by side, painting community center walls, they rebuilt more than facilities. They rebuilt trust, one shared purpose at a time. Their sunset walks became ceremonies of connection. Two people who'd learned that love isn't finding someone to complete you, but finding someone to grow alongside. Maya's social enterprise grew organically, spreading to 3 cities. Each pin on her map represented not just a location, but lives transformed through second chances. Graduation ceremonies became Maya's new awards shows. Watching formerly incarcerated individuals receive their certificates felt better than any business accolade she'd ever earned. When the community honored her service, Maya accepted not as someone seeking validation, but as someone who'd learned that recognition follows purpose, not the other way around. Speaking at conferences about addiction and recovery, Maya shared her story not as a cautionary tale, but as proof that transformation is always possible. 5 years later, Vivian's call came like an echo from another lifetime. Sitting across from her former friend in a modest coffee shop, Maya saw not her destroyer, but her unwitting teacher. "I owe you an apology," Vivian said, diminished by prison, stripped of her former power. "I accept your apology," Maya replied. "But I also want to thank you. You taught me the difference between what I thought I wanted and what I actually needed." Her weekly calls with her aging father became sacred rituals. "How's my favorite mechanic?" he'd ask, and Maya would smile, knowing she'd finally become the woman they'd both hoped she could be. Maya and David's wedding was not the elaborate affair her wealth might once have afforded, but it was rich in ways that mattered. Surrounded by family and the young people they'd mentored, their vows were witnessed by a community they'd helped build. In her later years, reviewing applications from people seeking admission to her program, Maya found her days filled with purpose. Each story reminded her of her own journey, the struggles, the wrong turns, the eventual discovery that true success meant looking at herself in the mirror with genuine pride. Maya's hands still bore the permanent stains of motor oil, but now they also bore the calluses of honest work and the gentle touch of someone who'd learned to help others rebuild their lives alongside her own. She had discovered that the most important engine she'd ever learned to repair was herself, and that the work of maintaining that repair was a daily commitment that brought its own deep satisfaction. The young woman who had once built her worth on others' approval had become someone who knew her own value, not despite her struggles, but because of how she had chosen to transform them into strength, wisdom, and service to others. Maya's story was not one of spectacular redemption or dramatic transformation. It was the quiet, powerful story of a person who had learned to build her life on foundations that could weather any storm: authentic relationships, honest work, and the daily choice to be someone she could respect. And that, Maya had discovered, was more than enough.